So last week, the XFL discusses player salaries. The XFL drafted timeline. This is from our man, Anthony Miller. So XFL Senior Vice President of Player Personnel, Doug Whaley, and Senior Director of Player Administration and Officiating Operations, that's a long title, Russ Giglio, spoke with agents last Monday regarding player compensation, the XFL draft, and the timeline for the 2023 season. The meeting consisted of in-depth details regarding what players will be paid for the upcoming season. Both Whaley and Giglio spoke as well regarding the XFL draft and how they are working through the evaluation and drafting process. The timeline for the upcoming season and how it will play out was also discussed, as many have a better idea of how it will all work. So first, the XFL draft details. With the 6 XFL player showcases complete, the Director of Player Personnel and Scouts are now evaluating all the players that were in the showcases. DPPs, not DDP, are heading to NFL camps now to evaluate players that could be good fits for the XFL. One note that was mentioned is because of the high turnouts, there's a possibility that another showcase could be scheduled sometime in the future. This isn't the special teams one. The specialists will have their camp hosted by former NFL kicker Nick Novak on October 23rd, which could possibly be the date range of a potential 7th player showcase, something to keep in mind. As mentioned at the XFL Town Hall last week, the draft will be occurring sometime in mid-November. Not the beginning of November, but mid-November. The league is still working out how they would like to format the draft, but it appears it could end up being positional. There were mentions of there being potential 2 or 3 supplemental drafts that take place afterwards to fill the roster spots. When it comes down to the size of the draft, Whaley mentioned potentially doing roughly 55 to 60 rounds of players being drafted to save room for other players to be signed afterwards. The draft pool doesn't necessarily consist of players who were at showcases, as it could be a mixture of both. Players who were previously with the XFL and not currently under contracts could be contacted to be part of the draft pool. All players apart from the draft pool must not be under contract with any other league. I don't know if they're going to put players back in old teams that they were in before. I doubt it, to be honest. Just kind of the season really never finished, and it would be interesting if players played again in their same cities, but I'm not sure if that's going to work out this time. The Director of Player Personnel is evaluating quarterbacks and bringing them to the XFL. The league is working out whether they want them drafted by teams or marry them to a specific team. They're hoping to take the same approach as the 2020 XFL by signing a quarterbacks off the bat to be in the league. So they're not sure how they're going to do that. Are they going to do a draft or are they going to sign them to a team? They did assign them before. It seemed to be easier, but again, that didn't really work out too well per se. Some guys got injured, some guys didn't play or started, and then other people came in. So we'll see how that goes. Their pay will be different from other players, but no details as far as how much they will be paid. XFL quarterbacks who are signed are considered higher paid, will not be eligible to leave for the NFL until the end of the season or contract. The league expects to an announcement of quarterback decisions by September. So we should be hearing what's the deal with the quarterbacks in a month. That's right, in a month. Keep that in mind. An interesting note is how the XFL is emphasizing the development of quarterbacks in their league. They will have quarterback personnel that will work with quarterbacks at least 3 or 4 times a month. The focus during these sessions is working on their mechanics on the field and studying film/classroom work off the field. Interesting. So XFL Training Camp and roster details. Each team will go into training camp with 66 players on their roster. Their plans are to have a mini camp sometime in December that could last 4 to 5 days in Arlington. An estimated start of training camp will be January 8th or 9th, located around the Arlington area. So mini camp, some kind of thing in December, that's for a couple days. Remember, in the XFL 2.0 era, they had these mini camps. They weren't in the centrally located, but they were in their cities. So I wonder if it seems like they'll do that in Arlington as well. So mini camp, fly everybody to Arlington, kind of work out the kinks, get together for a week or so, then head home, and then come back in January 2023. 5 weeks will be the length of the training camp, which is 1 week longer than it previously was back in 2020. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind, and also way longer than the USFL did. Cut down for rosters will occur either February 8th or 9th, as the size will decrease to 50 players. On game day, each team will have 45 active players on the roster. to play in the game. No free agency will exist with the XFL as they signed players accordingly. The league is going to have a regular season that consists of 10 weeks of games. Their postseason will be 2 weeks long, which includes the championship game played on the weekend of May 6th. So the May the 4th, be with you, will be 2 days later, and then the XFL championship game. Very cool. They haven't picked a date for the championship game as they're trying to decide whether they want to have the game before or after the Kentucky Derby. There was something about the lead-in with the Kentucky Derby that could help interest, especially to have the Kentucky Derby first. The Kentucky Derby is over at 4 o'clock. The XFL game at night. That could be a nice little lead-in there for the XFL. So player contract details. Each player in the XFL will receive a salary, though the Kentucky Derby, I think, is on NBC. So that might be an issue there. Usually it is, isn't it? I don't know. Each player in the XFL will receive a salary of $59,000 for the season with an additional $20,000 of additional benefits. So you could make almost $80,000. The additional benefits include health insurance, housing, and meals as they are covered by the league. So here's a breakdown of the contract pays for players. At least a one-year contract, total salary $59,000, $800 per week for players during training camp. That's way more than MLFB paid. Players will receive $5,000 per game and $1,000 bonus for winning the game. $1,500 a week for players who are inactive. They will receive a bonus for their team winning. Playoff bonuses are unknown but would be considered significant amounts for winning. Contracts won't be signed prior to the XFL draft. Another talking point regarding players and their contract was the NFL Alumni Academy's partnership with the XFL. This is designed to have players who are ready to go to replace injured players in the NFL. There will be a 3-week program in Arlington, Texas at Choctaw Stadium where players will receive life skill courses and on-the-field courses to prepare them for their play at football at any time. The player pool will roughly be 200 to 300 players in it. Any player apart from the academy that isn't on an NFL roster at the end of the season will have the option to opt into an XFL contract. This is to ensure that they automatically have a spot in the XFL. So what do you think of the players' pay? I think all of this stuff sounds good. One of the things that's been kind of out there that we haven't really had confirmation yet is that I believe that they are only signing 1-year contracts. That they basically could go play in the XFL and then go right into the USFL if they wanted to. Where the USFL is locking players in for a 2-year commitment. It looks like the XFL, which is doing something than the 2.0 era, is allowing players to just they play 1 year and then that's it. You go do whatever you want. We're not begging you to stay. So that's just something to keep in mind. And giving the players freedom is actually kind of a good thing. And I was a little surprised to hear that.